They taught you that love is earned through effort, that if you show up enough, give enough, try hard enough, someone will finally choose you. So you did exactly that. You texted first. You adjusted your schedule. You planned the dates. You listened, validated, explained, reassured. You gave more than you received, again and again, believing that consistency would be rewarded. And yet something strange kept happening. The more you leaned in, the more she leaned away. The more available you became, the less interested she seemed. It didn't matter how kind you were. It didn't matter how genuine your intentions were. It didn't even matter that you were becoming a better man. In her eyes, something essential had vanished. Not your goodness, your gravity. Here is the truth no one tells you early enough. What is easily accessed is rarely deeply valued. When something costs nothing, the mind assigns it little weight. This is not cruelty. It is human nature. And centuries before dating apps, before modern relationships, Machiavelli saw this pattern clearly, not in romance, but in power. He understood something uncomfortable. Desire does not grow where there is need. It grows where there is presence. Most men don't lose attraction because they are unworthy. They lose it because their effort reveals hunger. And hunger, no matter how polite or well-intentioned, repels. Not consciously, instinctively, like a scent in the air that signals imbalance. Machiavelli wrote that it is safer to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. But fear, in its deeper sense, was never about intimidation. It was about weight, about the quiet awareness that something has substance, that it does not bend easily, that it does not chase. Presence, not performance. The moment a man begins seeking validation instead of direction, something shifts. He stops being a force and becomes an orbit. His world shrinks until it revolves around her reactions, her moods, her replies. And the tragic irony is this: the more he tries to prove his value, the less valuable he appears. Because value does not announce itself. It does not plead. It simply exists. Think of a mountain. It does not ask you to admire it. It does not lean toward you. It stands. And because it stands, you feel it. You adjust your path around it. You respect its mass. Desire works the same way, not through chasing, but through anchoring. This is not manipulation. This is not a game. This is transformation. A shift from performing to embodying, from convincing to commanding, from trying to win her over to becoming someone whose presence doesn't require explanation. The moment you stop auditioning for love is often the moment love begins to look back at you differently. Not because you changed tactics, but because you changed position. Most men misunderstand attraction because they confuse attention with value. They believe that constant communication builds connection, that availability signals care, that saying yes creates intimacy. But attention without boundaries dissolves tension, and without tension, desire quietly dies. Imagine two fires. One is fed constantly, smothered with fuel until it chokes itself out. The other is fed slowly, deliberately, allowed to breathe. Which one lasts? Which one draws you closer? When you respond instantly every time, you teach others that your time has no weight. When you rearrange your life on command, you signal that your purpose is negotiable. And nothing drains masculine energy faster than surrendering your direction for approval. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers about exposure. Constant access breeds familiarity. Familiarity breeds contempt. Not because people are evil, but because the mind stops assigning value to what feels guaranteed. Scarcity, when natural, creates gravity. The man who is always available doesn't appear deep. He appears empty. but the man whose life is already full, who moves with intention, who responds with clarity instead of urgency, who gives time without chasing it, that man becomes rare. And rarity is magnetic. Women do not chase availability. They chase significance. They lean toward what feels grounded, not needy, toward what has direction, not desperation, toward the man who can look them in the eye and say without words, "I choose you, but I do not need you to complete me." That sentence is never spoken. It is felt. Here is the paradox that unlocks everything. The moment you remove her from the center of your universe, you give her a reason to wonder where your gravity truly lies. And wonder is the beginning of desire. This does not mean becoming cold. It means becoming whole. A man with a mission is not withholding affection. He is protecting his axis, his habits, his discipline, his vision. These are not obstacles to intimacy. They are the foundation of it. Because a man without a center cannot offer stability to anyone else. Every time you chase, you send a silent message. You are more important than my purpose. And while that may sound romantic, it quietly destroys attraction. Because deep down, even if she never says it, a man with nothing sacred has nothing to lean on. So the question is not how to make her want you more. The question is whether your life has enough weight that someone would want to step into it. This is where the shift begins. Not in tactics, not in lines, but in posture. In reclaiming your direction. In letting your presence speak before your words ever do. Because the man who stands firmly in his own world does not chase love. He creates a field where love chooses to approach. Every man knows this moment, even if he never talks about it. You meet a woman who ignites something in you. You show up fully. You give effort, attention, consistency. You think, "This time I'll do it right." And slowly, almost imperceptibly, she begins to fade. Replies slow. Energy shifts. Warmth cools. At first, you turn the blade inward. Maybe I said the wrong thing. Maybe I wasn't exciting enough. Maybe I wasn't enough. But the brutal truth is this. It wasn't what you gave. It was what your giving revealed. Machiavelli once wrote that men judge more by what they see than by what they truly know. People respond not to your inner intentions, but to the image your behavior projects. And what does overgiving project? Not devotion, not depth. It projects hunger. Availability, when excessive, does not signal strength. It signals submission. Pause and really think about this. In a world where attention is abundant, where messages arrive constantly, where validation is cheap, what actually stands out? Is it more attention? Or is it restraint? Scarcity is not about playing hard to get. Scarcity is about having something worth protecting. When a man overextends early, he doesn't create intimacy. He erases tension. And tension is the invisible current that keeps attraction alive. Without it, connection becomes flat, predictable, safe in the wrong way. Consider the man who always texts back immediately, who reshapes his schedule without question, who says yes even when it costs him. He believes he's building closeness, but unconsciously, he's teaching others that his time has no hierarchy, that his life has no center, that nothing in him requires earning, and the mind responds accordingly. Contrast that with the man who moves differently, not because he's playing games, but because his life already has momentum. He doesn't rush to reply because he's engaged in his own direction. He doesn't cancel his priorities for convenience. He gives presence when he chooses, not when he's summoned. Which man creates curiosity? Which man carries weight? Attraction does not grow from being constantly seen. It grows from being felt. And feeling requires space. Think of music. If every note were played at once, there would be no melody, only noise. Rhythm exists because of pauses. Silence is not emptiness, it's structure. The same is true in human dynamics. When there is no pause, no distance, no breathing room, desire suffocates. This is why Machiavelli warned that constant exposure breeds contempt. Influence erodes when access is unlimited. In leadership, in relationships, in life, the principle remains the same. What is always present becomes invisible. Let her feel your absence, not as punishment, but as reality. Not to provoke anxiety, but to reintroduce value. When you are not instantly available, the mind begins to fill the space, and in that space, curiosity forms. Desire is not forced. It grows where imagination is allowed to breathe. Most men are afraid of this space. Silence makes them anxious. Distance feels like loss, so they fill it with messages, explanations, reassurance. But every unnecessary word drains tension. Every attempt to secure certainty kills mystery. Mystery is not deception. Mystery is depth that hasn't been handed away yet. When your time becomes valuable to you, it becomes valuable to others. When you invest energy into your body, your craft, your growth, your mission, you stop needing someone else to validate your worth. And paradoxically, that independence becomes attractive. You are no longer offering yourself as a solution to her loneliness. You are offering a window into a life already in motion, and something subtle shifts. She leans in more. She initiates. She invests. Not because you manipulated her, but because you stopped manipulating yourself. You stopped trading your center for approval. You stopped collapsing your world around her reactions. So ask yourself this, honestly. If someone had to earn your time the same way you earn your own, through discipline, focus, and self-respect, would they qualify? This is the paradox most men never grasp. The moment you stop chasing is the moment you become hard to catch. And when something feels difficult to grasp, the mind assigns it value. Value creates respect. Respect creates desire. From this point forward, become the man whose time is earned, not through cruelty, through clarity, through presence, through purpose. Because the man who builds himself first never needs to beg to be chosen. He waits. And those who are aligned choose to follow. But there is something even more dangerous than rejection, more silent than betrayal, more destructive than a clear no. It is indifference. Indifference begins the moment someone believes they already know everything about you, when there is no mystery left, no depth to explore, no unanswered question pulling them forward. Every story that grips you, every character that stays with you, holds something back, not as a trick, but as a structure. The tension between what is revealed and what is hidden is what keeps you turning pages. And yet, most men sabotage themselves immediately. They meet a woman and unload everything. Their dreams, their wounds, their fears, their entire emotional history. They call it honesty. They call it transparency. But what they've really done is hand over the final chapter in the first act. And when a story ends too soon, the reader quietly puts the book down. Machiavelli understood this deeply. The man who reveals all his intentions becomes predictable, and the predictable man loses leverage, not because he is bad, but because there is nothing left to discover. You are not a vending machine. You are a vault. And what is unlocked slowly is valued deeply. Most men believe intimacy is created by revealing everything as quickly as possible. They think depth comes from exposure, that connection is built by emptying themselves out in the first conversations. So they talk, and talk, and talk. They explain their past, confess their fears, narrate their inner world in real time. They believe this makes them authentic. But authenticity without timing is not intimacy. It is self-erasure. Machiavelli understood a truth that still unsettles people today. A man who reveals all his intentions becomes predictable, and predictability in any arena of power is a weakness. Not because honesty is wrong, but because depth must be earned, not dumped. Mystery is not a trick. Mystery is protection. Think of yourself as a vault, not a diary. A diary is readable by anyone who picks it up. A vault requires keys, patience, investment. The more effort it takes to unlock something, the more the mind values what's inside. Desire is born in discovery, and discovery cannot exist when everything is given away freely. In a world that overshares, where every emotion is posted, every thought is broadcast, privacy becomes power. Not secrecy rooted in fear, but restraint rooted in self-respect. You are not hiding because you are ashamed. You are withholding because you are grounded. Ask yourself this honestly. Why do you rush to explain yourself? Is it to build trust, or is it fear? Fear that if you are not fully understood immediately, you will be abandoned. Fear that silence will cost you the connection. That fear is loud, and it leaks into your presence. Silence, on the other hand, is calm, and calm signals strength. The man who reveals himself slowly does something rare. He allows curiosity to form. He gives space for imagination. He lets the other person lean in, not because they're confused, but because they're intrigued. Each layer revealed feels like a reward, not an obligation. Compare two men. The first wears his heart on his sleeve. He shares every scar like a badge of honor. He over-explains his intentions. He over-analyzes every interaction. He wants to be understood so badly that he forgets to protect himself. He is like a documentary, informative, sincere, and forgettable. The second man moves differently. He is warm, but measured, open, but selective. He listens more than he speaks. He answers, but does not overflow. He allows pauses. He lets moments breathe. He is not rushing to be seen. He knows who he is. When she leaves the conversation, she doesn't know everything about him. And that's exactly the point. She thinks about him later. She replays his words. She wonders what else is beneath the surface. Because desire does not attach to what is fully known. It attaches to what feels deep enough to explore. Machiavelli believed that hidden intent was not deception, but freedom. The man who is unreadable cannot be governed easily. And unreadable does not mean confusing. It means composed. It means you do not hand out your blueprint to anyone who asks. Your life speaks louder than your explanations ever will. You don't need to narrate your growth. You don't need to justify your silence. You don't need to update anyone on every shift in your emotional weather. When you stop filling space with words, your presence begins to carry weight. This is especially important because most men destroy attraction not through what they do, but through how they react. Here is the next principle Machiavelli would insist you master: emotional discipline. Control is not dominance over others. It is sovereignty over yourself. Women test not to hurt you, but to observe you. They want to see how you move under pressure, how you respond when plans change, how you hold yourself when uncertainty appears. These moments are not traps, they are mirrors, and most men fail them quietly. They get one delayed reply and spiral. One dry message, and they flood the space with reassurance. One moment of distance, and they rush to fix what was never broken. Every reaction reveals something dangerous. Their center is external. Machiavelli warned that the man who cannot govern his passions will soon be governed by others. In attraction, this is absolute law. The moment your emotional state depends on her behavior, your power collapses. Calm is not indifference. Calm is strength under control. Picture two men again. One is ghosted for a few hours. He panics. He replays conversations. He sends follow-up messages to relieve his anxiety. He loses sleep. His identity shakes because her absence feels like a threat. The other man notices the silence and returns to his life. His training, his work, his peace. He does not assume. He does not chase. He does not bleed emotion into the void. Which man feels grounded? Which man feels rare? The ability to sit with discomfort without reacting is one of the most attractive traits a man can possess. Not because it is cold, but because it signals depth. A man who can hold tension without collapsing communicates safety, not softness. Structure. Intensity is not depth. Speed is not confidence. Sometimes the most powerful move is the pause. The pause before you speak. The pause before you chase. The pause before you explain yourself into smallness. In that pause, you reclaim control, not over her, but over you. And once a man controls himself, he becomes unshakable. Women feel this immediately. In your voice, your gaze, your energy. Even when they can't explain it, they sense that you are not reactive, that your presence is stable, that pressure does not fracture you. Masculinity is not the absence of emotion. It is mastery of it. You don't deny what you feel. You contain it. You process it. You don't spill it onto everyone around you. Because a man who leaks emotion under pressure teaches others how to move him. So you begin small. You slow your breath. You let anger rise without acting. You feel jealousy without begging. You experience rejection without letting it rewrite your worth. You sit in the fire without losing your center. Because the man who remains calm while others panic commands respect without saying a word. And in that quiet discipline, something ancient awakens. Not fear, not control, but gravity. And gravity changes everything. There is a moment every man faces where attraction and respect diverge. He feels it in small cuts, not dramatic wounds. A late reply excused too easily. A plan canceled without consequence. A joke at his expense that he laughs off even though something inside him tightens. He tells himself he's being understanding, mature, easygoing. But what he's really doing is teaching the world how to treat him. Machiavelli warned that when respect is not commanded, betrayal is invited. And betrayal doesn't always arrive as cheating or abandonment. More often, it comes as erosion, a slow wearing down of boundaries until nothing solid remains. Respect is not built by tolerance. It is built by clarity. Most men confuse peacekeeping with strength. They avoid drawing lines because they fear conflict will cost them affection. So they stay silent. They absorb disrespect. They hope patience will be noticed. But patience without limits doesn't look noble. It looks negotiable. And what is negotiable is eventually discarded. Here is the uncomfortable truth. If you never define the line, no one knows where it is. And where there is no line, there is no gravity, no weight, no reason to stay anchored. A woman doesn't test you because she wants to hurt you. She tests you to feel something solid, to see if you have a spine, to know whether you can lead the dynamic without force, whether you are a man or a placeholder. Every time you smile through disrespect, you answer that test, and the answer is never in your favor. Holding boundaries does not require anger. It requires presence. Calm, precise presence. The kind that says, without raising its voice, "That doesn't work for me." Not as a threat, not as manipulation, as a fact. Think of a lighthouse. It doesn't chase ships. It doesn't shout at the waves. It stands. And because it stands, others orient themselves around it. Boundaries work the same way. They are not walls, they are markers. When you correct gently but firmly, something shifts. Not dominance, but direction. Not control, but clarity. And clarity is what builds trust. If she mocks something sacred to you, you don't laugh it off. You meet her eyes and say, "I don't joke about things that define me." Then you stop talking. You let the weight land. If she cancels repeatedly, you don't chase for rescheduling. You step back. You let her reach. You allow her behavior to answer the question of whether she values your time. And if a hard boundary is crossed, you don't explode. You exit, quietly, with grace. Because the man who walks away without shouting walks with power. Respect follows the man who is willing to lose what disrespects him. This is why Machiavelli reminded rulers that fearing displeasure leads to losing the throne. As a man, your throne is your self-respect, your time, your energy, your peace. If you trade those away to keep someone comfortable, you will lose both them and yourself. Now comes the final shift, perhaps the most important of all. A man who loses his mission becomes a servant to someone else's. It rarely starts with chains. It starts with love. He falls for her and slowly adjusts. He gives a little more time, delays a goal, skips a habit, postpones a dream. He tells himself this is maturity, that real love requires sacrifice. But if you sacrifice your freedom to keep someone, you will eventually lose them anyway. Because no woman wants to be the center of your universe. She wants to be part of a man's world, not the world itself. When she met you, you had direction. Fire, a path, something that existed before her. The moment you orbit her instead of building your domain, that fire dims. She feels it not as closeness, but as regression. The man she was drawn to begins to disappear, not because he changed, but because he stopped leading himself. Availability increases. Value decreases. Here is the paradox Machiavelli understood. Love deepens when it is chosen, not when it is needed. A woman does not fall because you depend on her. She falls when she sees that you don't, and choose her anyway. Wholeness creates attraction. Need dissolves it. So you protect your sovereignty. You keep building. You maintain your rhythm. You train even when it would be easier to skip. You pursue your craft even when someone wants more of your time, not out of ego, but out of duty. Your purpose is not a side note. It is the headline. And something interesting happens when you live this way. You attract a different kind of woman. Not one who wants to slow you down or control you, but one who respects your movement. One who finds her place beside your path, not above it. And if she cannot, you let her go. Not with anger, with grace. Because you no longer trade freedom for affection. That era is over. You are not the man who abandons his vision to be accepted. You are the man who walks his path without apology. And if someone wants to walk with you, they rise to your level. You do not shrink to meet theirs. This is sovereignty. Machiavelli did not glorify romance. He glorified strategy, clarity, discipline. And the most strategic decision a man can make is this: never surrender your mission for temporary closeness, because when you lose your edge, you lose your gravity, and without gravity, nothing stays in orbit. So keep moving, keep growing, keep leading, not to impress, but because this is who you are. And when she sees that, when she realizes you would rather lose her than lose yourself, that is when respect solidifies. That is when desire deepens. That is when she chooses you not out of convenience, but out of awe. The man who remains sovereign does not chase love. He becomes the kind of man no one wants to lose. Here is the final truth most men never hear until life forces it on them. Attraction is not something you pursue. It is something you generate, not through effort, but through essence, not by proving, but by becoming. The man who commands love does not ask for it. He does not negotiate for it. He does not perform for it. He becomes grounded enough that love either aligns or walks away. And if it walks away, he does not collapse, because his worth was never dependent on who stayed. Most men chase love while quietly letting respect slip through their fingers. They tolerate late replies. They excuse emotional inconsistency. They accept subtle disrespect because they are afraid that drawing a line will cost them connection. But what they don't realize is that every time they abandon their standards, they trade long-term attraction for short-term relief. And relief is expensive. You cannot be loved deeply until you are respected fully. Respect is the soil. Love is what grows in it. When the soil is weak, nothing lasts. Machiavelli understood this with ruthless clarity. A ruler who fears upsetting others loses authority. A man who fears losing approval loses himself. Your self-respect is not optional. It is the foundation everything else stands on. This is why the man who stays calm under pressure becomes unforgettable. He does not chase clarity. He creates it. He does not explain his worth. He embodies it. He does not ask, "What do I need to do to make her stay?" He asks, "Is she strong enough to walk beside who I truly am?" That single question changes everything. Love built on performance always collapses. Love built on truth endures, or ends cleanly. And either outcome is power. If she cannot meet you where you stand, you let her go. Not because you are bitter, not because you are closed, but because you are complete. And a complete man does not bargain with his core just to be chosen. Here is what Machiavellian wisdom teaches when stripped of myth and fear. Control is not taken. It is maintained. Power is not loud. It is composed. Influence is not forced. It is earned through restraint, discipline, and clarity. You don't show up everywhere. You show up intentionally. You don't speak to be heard. You speak because your silence already has weight. You don't compete for attention. You carry yourself in a way that demands it without asking. And when a woman meets this kind of man, she feels it immediately. Not in words. In atmosphere. In the steadiness of his gaze. In the calm authority of his presence. In the sense that he is not trying to extract something from her. She either rises or leaves. And both outcomes serve him. If she rises, it is because she respects his direction. If she leaves, it is because she was never meant to walk that path. Either way, he does not lose himself. This is the awakening most men resist because it requires letting go of the chase, letting go of people-pleasing, letting go of the fantasy that being good, agreeable, and endlessly available will be rewarded. The reward is not love. The reward is sovereignty. From this point forward, you are no longer the man who performs. You are no longer the man who waits to be chosen. You are no longer the man who gives his crown away for crumbs of affection. You walk your path, even if it means walking alone. And because of that, you never walk empty. You don't beg for love. You don't compete for validation. You command presence by mastering yourself, by standing in your values, by protecting your mission, by refusing to shrink. This is what makes a man unforgettable. Not charm, not volume, not effort, but gravity. So if something inside you feels still right now, focused, heavy, unapologetically clear, don't ignore it. That is not motivation. That is recognition. The part of you that remembers who you were before you learned to chase. From this moment on, you don't ask for permission to be yourself. You don't explain your evolution to those who benefited from your obedience. You don't hand your power away to be liked. You stand, you lead, you choose, and if someone wants to walk with you, they rise to meet you. You never descend to be kept. That is the man Machiavelli would respect, and that is the man you are becoming.